Humans were really just the most amazing explorers. Like, we took over the world. We've gone to the bottom of the ocean. We've gone to outer space. We just like walked out of Africa and ended up everywhere. And I think there's still a good case for exploring in your life at home. Like, you could go to some trail you've never been on. You could go to a restaurant that you've never been to and not look anything up about it beforehand. Like, don't read the Yelp reviews. Don't read all the stuff online. Just go in cold and just see what that experience is going to be like. Because now we live in a world where we can just look everything up and we know what sort of experience we're going to have beforehand. And so if you can just remove that urge to search everything beforehand and just put yourself into new experiences, I think that it's awesome. It just, like, people get rewards from that. It makes everything new. It really forces you into the present moment. And it's powerful.
Okay, Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so to get started, it seems that life is getting easier and easier, and our quality of lives are getting better for the most part, but people aren't happier. So what's going on?
Oh man, that's a big question. So I think the sort of general thesis of a lot of my work. So I've done two books, The Comfort Crisis and Scarcity Brain, and I do a newsletter called 2% Newsletter. And I think what I found is that as things become easier and easier and easier in the world. So if you think about it, like, our lives have changed drastically over the last 100 years, 1,000 years, 100,000 years. I mean, everything from how we get our food to how we get water to how we interact with others to how we get from point A to point B to the jobs we do. They've all become much easier. And while that is a good thing in the grand scheme of time and space with progress, you find that humans get the most internal rewards and deep satisfaction, and in turn, happiness, from when we have to do hard, challenging things, when we have to put in effort and sort of struggle along the way to this sort of larger goal of living better. And so that's kind of a long way of saying, I think that as the world has become so much easier, we don't get that as much.
Interesting. Can you tell me about prevalence and just concept change and this idea of problem creep?
Yeah. Um, so the short answer is that this is this theory that basically states, as humans experience fewer and fewer problems, we don't actually become more satisfied. We simply lower our threshold for what we consider a problem. And so as the world gets better, our problems become more hollow. We start to develop what are called first world problems in, sort of common terms. And this was discovered by these two psychologists at Harvard. And they did these sort of clever experiments, two of them. And in both, as people started to get fewer problems coming their way, more or less, um, they just ended up with the same number of problems because they lowered their definition of what they considered a problem.
This reminds me of there's an essay by Mark Manson online. I think it's the title is like, "What pain do you want?" And that's my accent. Like, I'm saying pain, Pain, just to clear that up. But he's basically saying that, like, the problem free life isn't probably not possible, but it's not even desirable. The goal should be like figuring out a way of life and a way of working where you're solving the problems that you want to be solving. Like, when you're actively, like, you've consciously chosen the problems that you want to work on. And have you found that's the case in your own work? Like, you're writing these really interesting books, you're traveling the world doing this research. It seems like you're working on problems that really matter to you, but you're doing it in a way that you find really interesting and meaningful too.
Yeah, totally. So I'll answer that in two ways. I mean, I'll answer it just sort of big picture for humans. Um, when you look at all the myths and stories that humans have told each other for thousands and thousands of years, myths from all different societies, they all have the exact same structure. And the structure is basically like, things are good in the main character's life, and then, a problem inserts itself in the main character's life. And then that character has to go through all these different sort of struggles and turmoils and go on adventures in order to solve that problem. And in the end, they come out a totally new and better person because they've learned something along the way. As they've solved those problems, they've learned what they're capable of. They've learned new information that is going to affect their decisions moving forward should they face another problem. So, in my own personal work, I mean, I really like to think that problems are how humans grow and learn and become better. So, with my writing, I always like to say, no problem, no story. So when I go out and report these books, I travel all over the world, and so I'll go into some pretty, well, I guess, places that people would maybe consider extreme. You know, like I've gone really deep into the Bolivian Amazon, I've gone into Baghdad, I've gone just all around the world. And when I take on those trips, if everything goes perfect and according to plan, it's nice, but the story isn't as good.
Sure. And like, apart from the rocking, are there any other things you've integrated that have had a positive impact?
Yeah. So from the comfort crisis, I write about the value of time in nature. So I talk about this idea called the nature pyramid, and it basically prescribes how much time in different types of nature humans should spend for creativity benefits, mental health benefits, all these different benefits. And so 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 3 times a week, that's associated with decreases in stress, increases in productivity, and that can be just in a city park, anywhere, just any nature you can find out your door. And then the second part of the pyramid is 5 hours, 5 hours a month in a little more remote nature, like a state park that might have some trails, but you still get cell service, you know. That's associated with big increases in happiness and decreases in depression. And that's from some researchers in Finland. They did this giant study with like 70,000 people. And then at the very top is 3 days in the backcountry. And so this elicits this thing called the 3 day effect. And the 3 day effect basically finds that after you spend 3 days in the backcountry, your calmness just goes way up, your creativity goes way up, stress goes way down. So in daily life, our brains ride what are called beta waves. And these are sort of these like frenetic, go, 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 stressed out waves associated with burnout and all these bad things. But after you've spent 3 days in the backcountry, your brain starts to ride alpha waves. And those are the same waves that are found in experienced meditators. And it's just like the calm, you feel good. And it actually lasts too. So that like those feelings, they last for a while. And this is why there's a lot of researchers who are looking at extended time in nature as a treatment for PTSD in veterans, things like that. So that kind of gives me this like weekly, monthly, annual plan of using nature to enhance my life.
That's fantastic. I do the Camino de Santiago. I do maybe a week,
Oh,
a few
cool.
times a year. And
Perfect.
funny you said about the 3 days because I've noticed like it does seem to take about 3 days to flush just the busyness of life out of my system. And then once I'm on the fourth day, it's just like it just flows almost effortlessly, like the walk in, like it's you're totally immersed in the experience. But there is that 3 day
Yeah.
um build up to it.
That's amazing. Well, what's funny is like you said you go do the Camino, and you've noticed this in your life. The way that researchers sort of stumbled on this is it was sort of discovered and coined by these researchers at the University of Utah. But the way it all happened is that there was this guy who's kind of this famous character in Salt Lake City who owns this bookstore, and he had mentioned this idea to a guy who is a neuroscientist who studies how nature impacts the brain. So this bookstore owner goes, "Yeah, after 3 days, like I don't know, something happens. Something happens. I just call it the 3 day effect." And this nature researcher kind of goes, "You know what? That same thing happens to me too. That's kind of wacky." He goes, "I wonder if I could study this." So then they took a group of people and they studied it. And yeah, there's just something about 3 days that like some magic happens.
And so just to sort of clarify here, you're saying 3 20-minute sessions per week,
Yep.
and then 5 hours per month, is that you said, or
Five
five
hours total per month. Yep.
5 hours total a
So
month?
like you could do 2 hours one Saturday, you could do an hour the next Sunday, you could get another 2 hours the Saturday after, just so you accumulate 5 total hours.
And then a 3 day, just backcountry immersion
Yep, once a
once per
year.
year.
Yep. And I mean, if you want to do these are like minimums. So if you want to do more, do more.
Brilliant. Okay. So in the scarcity brain, I want to start talking about this here now. Um, why do we find moderation so hard?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's the question the book seeks to answer. I think that it is because if you look at the grand sweep of human history, so our species has been around 200 to 300,000 years, depending on which anthropologist you ask. Obviously, humanity as a whole, our genus has been around for about 2.5 million years. Um, when you look at that grand sweep of time, everything that we needed to survive and thrive in life, it's always been scarce. It's always been hard to find. So everything from food to possessions to information to the number of people we could influence, all these things were always scarce and hard to find. So for pretty much all of time, you were incentivized to, when you had the opportunity to get those things, to overdo it, to not moderate at all. Like in the case of food, not moderating, that would save your life because you'd eat way too much, you'd pack on fat. And then when food was inevitably hard to find, you would have that fat store that would keep you alive. But same for information, same for possessions. And I think that evolution would have favored people who were terrible at moderation. And we now still have all those genes and that drive for more in a world where it is suddenly possible to get more, where we have so much food, millions and millions of things we can buy on Amazon, where our information ecosystem is just like Twitter at our fingertips, news at our fingertips, Reddit rabbit holes at our fingertips, on and on and on. And even with status and influencing people, right? It's like in the past, you could maybe influence the 50 other people in your tribe. Great. And you wanted to do that because that would give you a survival advantage, right? If you're the top dog, you're eating first. Uh, but now you can influence millions of people in a single tweet or a single Instagram post, and it all gets quantified. And so I think we've just set our world up for more, and we are a species that likes to overdo things.
I've heard you talk about there's a tribe in Paraguay and they were like they found an orange bush and they just basically eat as many oranges as they possibly can and they just load up and the whole idea is they're just storing those calories for a rainy day when they might not have access to them.
Yeah, and this is like common behavior among hunter gatherers. Yeah, that tribe in Paraguay. I heard that from a guy who's an anthropologist at I think he's at USC, and his name's Michael Gervin. And he spent time with a lot of hunter gatherer tribes studying them. He's like, yeah, I'm with this tribe, and we're out looking for food, and we come across this tree that had oranges or tangerines or whatever. It's like they found it, and they sat down and they ate so many oranges that they all vomited, and then they paused, and then they ate more oranges. He's like, I'm thinking this is insane. But in reality, if you're in that situation, which is how humans lived for millions of years, that makes a lot of sense. You also see it in the Hadza hunter gatherers, where when they come on a beehive that has honey, they will just stop and they will eat all that honey, like so much honey, and it's so calorie dense, and they'll just eat until they're like comatose from all the sugar.
Wow. And that same psychology is in us today with our abundance of calories and everything at our fingertips. This is just same software.
Yeah, yeah, and I think what's different today is that our food has really changed. So, for example, in nature, you never naturally find fat and sugar together. Like there's nothing that has that combination. Now, that is a really potent combination for delivering calories. And today, pardon me, with all our ultra processed food, like that combination is in everything. And it leads us to, it kind of does something to our brain where it goes, oh, this is good. This is really calorie dense. Probably eat a little more of this than you need. You do that across a lifetime, and it's, I think, not surprising that, at least in the US, I think 75% of people are either overweight or obese.
Wow. Wow. So the book really centers around the scarcity loop. Can you maybe give us an overview of what the loop is and the mechanics here?
Yeah. So do you guys have gambling and slot machines in Ireland?
Um, as as far as I'm aware, we do. Yeah. Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
So I live in Las Vegas, and this is like the gambling center of the world, right? And we have slot machines everywhere in town. Like, they're at the grocery stores, the markets, they're at gas stations, they're of course in the casinos. And I will watch people play these things all day. Like, I go fill up my car with gas, and there's someone in the gas station who's probably been sitting at that slot machine playing it for hours and hours on end. And I see this, and to me, I'm like, why would anyone do that? Like, the house is always going to win, right? Like, these things wouldn't exist if they didn't make money. The longer you play, the more you lose over time. And so that's a question for me, right? I'm a journalist. It's like, well, I observe a behavior that doesn't make sense. My job is to go, why would someone do that? So, long story short, I end up in this laboratory. Okay, and it's on the outskirts of Vegas, and it is a brand new, cutting edge, top of the line casino, but it's used entirely for research on human behavior. And so they've built like a real casino where they can just observe people, they can tweak the systems of gambling, and basically get people to gamble more. And it's there that I end up talking to the slot machine designer. And he's like, I ask him, I'm like, well, how the hell does a slot machine work? He goes, oh, it's pretty simple. And it works on this three-part system that I call the scarcity loop. So it's like, you can think about it as sort of the ultimate behavior loop for driving people into decisions they later regret. So it's got three parts. It's got opportunity, it's got unpredictable rewards, and it's got quick repeatability. So opportunity, you have an opportunity to get something of value. Quick repeatability, sorry. One, opportunity. You got an opportunity to get something of value. Two, unpredictable rewards. You'll get the thing of value at some point, right? But you don't really know when, and you don't know how valuable it's going to be. So with a slot machine, the opportunity is money. The unpredictable rewards are, well, this game I could lose. This game I could win $1, or I could win like $1 million, right? Crazy range of outcomes. And then three is quick repeatability. You can immediately repeat the behavior to try and get the good thing of value again and again and again. So the average slot machine player plays 900 games an hour. Those three parts, they're what makes slot machines work. But what ends up happening is, like, Vegas really discovers how this formula works in the 80s. And it ends up basically 10xing slot machine revenue overnight. And other industries then see this and they go, what the hell is Vegas doing? Like, what is that? How has that become such a moneymaker? And so now you start to see this scarcity loop put in all sorts of different technologies that I think drive us into these repeat behaviors that we regret in the long run. So it's what makes social media work, right? It's like, you got this opportunity, say you post, you got an opportunity for likes to feel good, but you don't know if you're going to get like one like, which you go, that didn't feel good. Or you could go viral and get 1 million likes. And that's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then once you've posted, you check and you recheck and you check and you recheck all day, right? It's the quick repeatability. It's in dating apps. The idea of like, swipe, 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 swipe. Am I going to find a mate? Swipe, swipe. Oh, I matched with someone. Amazing. This is great. Swipe, 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 swipe. It's in the rise of sports betting. So sports betting has become just giant in the US. It's in online shopping with this idea of like giving people quick lightning bargains and like all this stuff they could buy, and you search and you search and then you find the right item and it's on sale. Jackpot. Amazing. I bought it. Now I got to go shop more. Right. And so you're just seeing it being integrated in all these different places.
And am I right in saying that they've studied people that actually win at slot machines and they find they're actually not happy, or not, they're less happy when they get a win because there's like a changeover and it interrupts their flow of being involved in this loop.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is so you tend to find this in problem gamblers that they're not really playing to win. They're playing just to play the game, to lapse into this sort of flow of just like play, play, play. So what happens when you win over a certain amount of money is that all of a sudden you got to pay taxes on it. So the machine will shut down, and a representative from the casino has to come and have you fill out paperwork so you can play taxes on it, and that interrupts the game. So they're not necessarily there to win the money. Yeah, it's fine, but like it's interrupted their gameplay. And they're like, oh, dang.
For sure. You mentioned there about uh this has been used in so many different industries and everything now. And another thing you mentioned is gamification and sort of quantifying everything, putting numbers on everything. And this becomes very addictive as well. For me, I started running during COVID probably, and I used to just go for a run in nature on the weekend and really enjoy it. Just go for a couple, like an hour and a half, 2 hours, like really slow paced. Loved it. Just a very meditative experience. And then I was training for a half marathon around this time last year, and my friend was like, "Oh, you should get Strava. Like, it's really good, you know." So I get Strava, and fast forward 6 months, and like every time I go for a run, I'm like looking at my watch, like, what's the time? Like, and always trying to like outdo my past score, like tracking how many kudos I'm getting on the runs and stuff. And it's like I'm embarrassed to say that, but that's what I'm doing, like, and I think these things can it's very difficult not to get caught up in these games. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, it is very hard. And so I think what numbers give us is they give us a clear sense of how we're doing. And in the case of Strava, the numbers are often tied into other things like social likes or whatever it might be. And so, if you kind of pull back and you go, okay, what is the goal of running? Well, the goal of running is that there's like a lot of goals, right? It's like you want to improve your health. For you, it was this meditative act. You want to spend time in nature. You want to learn what you're capable of. You want to relax. There's like a million different things running is bringing you. But the moment that you run that through an app and an algorithm and you start to quantify it, the goal becomes one thing, and that is the number. So that's to run the certain pace, get the certain amount of likes. All these different things just get swept aside for this sort of random number. And you see that in really anything that gets sort of gamified and quantified. Like a good example, for example, is Twitter or X. It's like the whole thing is supposed to be a platform for discussions. And if you ask what's the goal of a discussion, there's a million goals. Understand someone, be understood, BS with people, have fun, like all these different things, right? But when Twitter puts retweets, number of retweets you get, number of likes you get, number of followers you get, all of a sudden the goal of that becomes get retweets, get likes, get followers. And how you do that is often at odds with all those other goals of a discussion. Because what actually ends up getting retweets is saying crazy things and being controversial. And so you start to find people, the algorithm effectively trains people to do the thing they need to do to get the numbers, even though that's not the original goal of why people join this platform. And you can apply that to so many different things like grades, pretty much any social media platform. I mean, on and on and on.
So we are, for like on things like Twitter, we repeat what we get rewarded for. So if let's say I'm tweeting about politics, psychology, economics, and the tweets I put out about politics get a big response, then I'm going to go, right, I want to tweet about politics more and less about psychology and economics. And then we're sort of, our self is then created that way because we're just rewarded by the algorithms in that fashion.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and the important point is that like you could get rewards from that in a lot of different ways, right? Your reward could be, hey, I just said something really clever on Twitter, right? But the reality is the reward becomes the metric. the likes. That's how we score it. And so then you start to go, oh, well, the reward is the metric. So I got to do what I can do to get the metric up.
I would say there's so many people that have fallen into that trap and basically just become someone they never intended to be because of these algorithms, just reinforcing just one specific aspect of their personality. I can think of a few examples that I'll not name, but yeah. Um, I love what you said there about when you went back to running. It's like ask why you're doing it. Understand what the goal of running is, and if you're clear that it's you want to be out in nature, you want to get healthy and all the rest. If you're clear on that, then I think you're less susceptible to just getting blindsided by that one quantifiable metric, and you can see it's actually just it's a tiny fragment of a much bigger picture.
Yeah, totally. I think it's worthwhile to run those questions through your mind and say, why am I doing this thing in the first place? What do I really want to get out of it? And I think when people have those discussions, they'll find that usually the main thing they want to get out of it is not this like random time, right? A runtime or these random likes from people that you don't probably necessarily know. I mean, I'm not saying that that's like bad to do. I just think that people get captured by the metrics and lose sight of why they're really doing this in the first place. And those reasons that they're really doing this in the first place are often a lot more enhancing to someone's life, to their health, to their mental health.
Yeah, when I was preparing for this conversation, I was one of the things I was surprised to learn from you was that snacking is actually an invention, quite a recent one as well. Can you maybe tell us about this?
Yeah. So snacking really rose in the 1970s. And the reason was because if someone is eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, well, now the food industry is like, okay, well, we can only sell you breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So they invent this new category called snacking, and it's eating between meals. And they create this whole new category of foods that are snack foods. And those snack foods tend to be, unfortunately, junk foods, right? It's like this package, like chips, cookies, I guess you guys call them biscuits, things like that, right? And so I think once snacking starts to really pervade people's lives, we're eating more food generally, and we're eating a lot more food that is ultra processed. And that has definitely had an effect on our waistlines. And what was really interesting too is I talked to this guy who's a executive in the snack food industry, and he told me if you want to make a snack food successful, it has to have three V's. It's got to have value, so it's got to like a lot of taste for the price. It's got to have variety. So there's got to be a lot of different options, right? If you go into a grocery store in the US, you see Doritos. You guys have Doritos? Yeah. There's like there's like 15 different kinds of Doritos, right? And then it's got to have velocity. It has to be quickly consumable so people eat a lot of it fast. Now, if you look at those three V's, that is the exact same structure of the scarcity loop. So it's now even in the food we eat.
That's scary. So you spent some time with I think it's the Chimone tribe in the Bolivian Amazon jungle. What did you learn from these people?
Yeah, so I got interested in them because if you look at what kills humans, it's by and large heart disease. Heart disease is the number one killer of people worldwide. And at the same time, it's also, if you look at what people search about around what scares them, it's super low on the totem pole. Like people don't search it, they don't care, the media doesn't cover it, but it is the number one killer of humans. So I read this study that focuses on this tribe, and it finds that they have the healthiest hearts ever recorded. So they basically don't die of heart disease. So I'm like, well, that seems like that might be some good information for us, considering we're all keeling over of heart disease. And so I go visit them. And so this requires, I fly into La Paz, take this long car ride down into the jungle. Once I get to the jungle, we got to go upriver in a canoe, like 6 hours. And then I end up hanging out with them. And the reason they don't get heart disease, the main reason seems to be around what they eat. And the key factor is that they don't eat any ultra processed foods. They're only eating foods that are one ingredient. So rice, corn, meat that they hunt, fish that they catch, fruit that they go pick off the trees, vegetables they grow themselves. All their meals are just sort of single ingredients together. And that seems to lead them to basically not overeat. And by not overeating, they seem to avoid heart disease.
I love that. There's there's like protein bars you get here in the UK and Ireland, and one of them's called like Eat Natural. And then you look at the back of the packet and it's like 50 ingredients. And it's like that's about as natural as a hole in your head. Like there's nothing natural about that bar, like.
No, 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 no. And the more ingredients that you jam pack into a food, um, it becomes you're concentrating the calories effectively. So you become less full per bite, and that tends to lead people to overeat. So there's this really great study from the NIH here in the US, and it basically found that when people eat mostly ultra processed food, they end up eating about 500 more calories per day, and they gain weight and their health markers go in a bad direction. When they eat unprocessed food, foods that are just one ingredient, they end up eating a lot less. They lose weight spontaneously. And then there was a follow up study in Japan that found that the number was actually 800 fewer calories when people ate unprocessed food in that study. I mean, that's huge across the day.
And what about your own eating? Like, do you follow any kind of way, particular way, or do you just eat real food whenever you're hungry? Like, what's your setup?
Yeah, I mean, I try and eat foods that just have one ingredient. So for breakfast, I'll eat oatmeal and maybe some eggs and some berries. For lunch, I'll maybe have just plain yogurt and like some fruit. Then for dinner, I'll have maybe rice or potatoes and fish or meat with some vegetables. And it's all pretty simple. I mean, it's not like I'm saying I would never eat an ultra processed food. Like the stuff is amazing, tastes great. But I think we also have to realize that it comes with downsides and it's engineered to lead us to eat more than we plan to. And so you just kind of got to be a little bit careful around it.
I heard someone say one time you should just aim to eat like your grandparents would have ate. Like they wouldn't have had access to all these foods, like just very simple, basic foods that you would have got off the farm. Um,
Yeah.
you spent some time in the Arctic for this book. Can you maybe tell us about your experience there and what you learned from your time there, and also coming back as well?
Yeah. So yeah, for the comfort crisis, I went to the Arctic for more than a month and we were on this long backcountry hunt. We were hunting caribou. And I think, one of the big takeaways for me is that everything that we did took effort. It's like if you wanted to have water, I had to hike down to the stream and get it, and then I had to carry the heavy water bag back up to camp. It's like if I wanted to be warm, well, you got to go gather a bunch of wood. Hopefully, you can find it, and then you got to haul it all back to camp, and you got to build a fire. For food, I mean, we packed in our food, so we didn't pack in much because food is heavy, and we were starving until we actually successfully hunted a caribou. Um, Freezing cold. Like if I wanted to go to the bathroom, I had to walk out into the tundra with a rifle because there's grizzly bears everywhere. And so you just start to see that life has changed so much and life is more comfortable than ever. And it's like when I get home, hot water just comes out of a freaking faucet, right? The food is in the pantry all the time and it's in the refrigerator all the time. And if I need more of it, there's literally an app for that. I don't even have to leave home and go to the grocery store anymore. If I want to get from point A to point B, I got a car. I don't have to walk. If I'm too cold, I have a button I can push in my house that just makes the house warmer. If I'm too hot, I'll just press the button downward. And so I think what it really taught me is just one, that modern life is incredible. I mean, it really is. And we forget that. And I mean, I'd never thought of hot running water my entire life. Like it just appeared. But after I go spend that time in the Arctic, I come back and I'm like, oh my God, hot running water is the most amazing thing that could ever happen to a person. And I think the sort of big picture there is that that makes you grateful and it makes you realize, like, wow, it's an incredible time to be alive. It really is. And then, two, I think it really reinforced this idea for me that if that improving your life often takes doing uncomfortable things and embracing short term discomfort to get a long term benefit.
I imagine there must have been a lot more reward in just the simple things whenever you were in the Arctic. Like whenever you actually did find the wood and build the fire would have been really appreciated because you had to, exert yourself to get that. And the same with the water and the same with the food too. You must have really turned up the volume on your sensory experience during that time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, everything by putting in effort, what you get out of it, you appreciate it a lot more. And this is, I mean, I think this makes sense. I talked to this guy who's a psychologist named Thomas Zental, and he explained that, it makes a lot of evolutionary sense that humans appreciate things that we had to work harder to get. And this was probably to reinforce survival. So it's like if you if you go, hey, I need food, and you exit your tent or teepee, and there's just a big patch of berries right there, you're like, oh, okay, great. But if you have to walk 10 miles to this place where you think has berries, oh, and it doesn't have it, you got to walk another 5. That doesn't have it either. You got to walk another 5. Well, when you find those berries, that's got to be the most amazing thing that's ever happened to you. Like it has to be, oh my God, we found it. This is incredible because you get to live. And so there's that sort of, you just get so much more rewards from that, these things that you have to work harder for. And that helped us persist in the future because we knew there would be this big internal deep reward from that hard work. And that still holds today, even though we don't necessarily have to go out and do those hard things.
For sure, for sure. It's almost like now we have to engineer the difficulty into our lives to experience that same reward that would have just been built into life back then. And we do that through things like exercise and yeah, just consciously engaging in those things. I was
Yep.
wondering, have you thought about how the scarcity loop can be harnessed in a positive way? Have you found any ways to leverage it for an interesting way in your own life?
Yep. I have. So the reason that we fall into it in the first place as humans is because it would have helped reinforcing finding food. So if you think about our ancestors in the past, it's like kind of like I just said with the berries. It's like you go to one place, no berries. You go to another place, oh shoot, no berries. You go to another place, oh ding ding ding, jackpot, berries, right? It's just like you have the opportunity to get food, but it's unpredictable. You don't know where the food is, so you got to repeat and repeat and repeat till you find that food. And then that's awesome. So that system, that reason that I just talked about is why we fall into that loop today, why we're so captured by it. And I think you can leverage it for good in your life. So I think that there's a lot of instances in nature where you find the scarcity loop. So for example, people who fish, right? It's like you're out there to fish, but you don't know when you're going to catch one. You don't know when a fish is going to rise, but when it rises, it's like, oh my God, amazing. Right? People will get, so like people who are really into food will forage for mushrooms and things like that. That's the same deal. I mean, even just walking in nature, I think you see things that surprise you and are totally random, but you're like, oh, amazing. Like, for example, the other day, this was on Sunday, my dog and I will usually go do a long run in the desert. And we're running on this trail and we just hear this sort of like rock falling. And so we look and it's a desert bighorn ram. And these are like very rare to see. They're those like big with the full curl and it looks at us, we look at it, and then it's like, well, I'm getting out of here because you guys are a threat. But we watched this thing just climb up the cliffs. It was incredible. And it's like it's those sort of random things where you're just like, holy hell, like I'm never gonna forget seeing that desert bighorn with my dog ever because it was like this totally random reward.
That's beautiful. Okay. And from these two books, Michael, are there any things that you feel are particularly important that might you might not get asked about a lot, or you don't feel they get the attention that you might have hoped for? Anything in particular come to mind?
Oh, that's a really good question. Things I haven't talked about a lot. Yeah, in the comfort crisis, I talked about the value of silence. And what was interesting about being in the Arctic is that it's just so unbelievably silent, like so silent. And at first, it's very uncomfortable. Like, this is kind of weirding me out. But then once you go through that discomfort, I just really calmed down, felt a lot less stress, just like, I feel great. And when you look at the modern world, humans have increased the world's loudness, I think, fourfold. So people live in a ton of noise now, and we're just surrounded in noise all the time. And it doesn't seem to be great for mental health. So you find that when the more noise that people are in, the worse off on average mental health is. And so I think there's a really good case for actively trying to add more silence into your life. And yes, it'll probably be uncomfortable at first. You'll be like, I'm just sitting here in silence doing my work. This is weird. I'm used to listening to music or having a TV blaring in the background or whatever it might be. Um, but I think you'll find that over time, your stress lowers. I think productivity will go up. There's some interesting studies with office workers, and those who are in silent offices tend to be more productive and do better work. So that's one thing, leveraging silence. And then I would say the second thing is that in Scarcity Brain, I talk about the value of exploration and how humans were really just the most amazing explorers. Like, we took over the world. We've gone to the bottom of the ocean. We've gone to outer space. We just like walked out of Africa and ended up everywhere. And I think there's still a good case for exploring in your life at home. Like, you could go to some trail you've never been on. You could go to a restaurant that you've never been to and not look anything up about it beforehand. Like, don't read the Yelp reviews. Don't read all the stuff online. Just go in cold and just see what that experience is going to be like. Because now we live in a world where we can just look everything up and we know what sort of experience we're going to have beforehand. And so if you can just remove that urge to search everything beforehand and just put yourself into new experiences, I think that it's awesome. It just, like, people get rewards from that. It makes everything new. It really forces you into the present moment, and it's powerful.
I love that. I'm gonna definitely do more of that in my life. Um, what's the hardest thing you've ever done, Michael?
Oh, I mean, well, besides getting sober, um, I'd say that's the hardest thing. But then, yeah, I would probably say physically, it was my time in the Arctic. It's just a long time out there. There's a lot of difficult, dangerous situations. In my professional life, I would say it's probably writing books. I mean, books are just, it's not so much that you don't have the material. I usually write double the length of what my books get published at. It's really grappling with the ideas and like putting all the pieces together. It's like a bajillion piece puzzle that you have to put together over a year or two. So,
Okay, okay.
what about you?
I did an ultra a few months ago, and I got food poisoning the night before the race. So it meant that I couldn't eat anything for the second. So it was a double marathon. For the second marathon, I couldn't eat anything. So I'm just like food poisoning, running along, and just about to die. But I got there in the end and
That's awesome.
spent the night in a hospital on an IV drip, but got it done. So
What did you learn from that?
um, don't eat don't eat at a restaurant before a major sporting event the night before. That was the big lesson. Cook at home, eat simple, don't do anything stupid. That was probably the big
Hmm.
takeaway.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb.
But Michael, I've loved every minute of this conversation. I want to wish you the best of luck with your next book as well.
Thank
Um,
you.
where where can people find you online? You've got a great newsletter as well. Where can people subscribe to that?
Yep. So the newsletter is called 2% Newsletter. It is at twopct.com is its sort of landing page. You can find all our back stories there and sign up. It's free. And then, yeah, that's probably the best place to find me. I appreciate you having me on, man. This is a really good conversation. I appreciate how thoroughly you read the books. When I do podcasts, I can tell whether the person really read the book or not. And you definitely read the book. So thank you.
Thanks, Michael.